poles came to life, blooming as though it were summer again. Blue Belt's man's bow and quiver of arrows, and Brown Shield man's hand drum floated in the open air of the lodge. The half-skinned rabbit Painted Turtle Man had snared grew large and plump. Everyone turned towards the baby. No longer shivering, the boy was content, suckling at his mother's breast. The others looked at each other, puzzled. "You remember what it felt like to be around Uncle Gray Bear, don't you?" Painted Turtle Man asked. Walking Moon Woman's eyes widened as she remembered. The very air had changed, carrying on it a strange vibration that could be felt deep in the chest. They gathered around the child, whose skin was glowing with an ancient magic. His eyes began to open for the first time, revealing a sliver of gray. They gasped as the boy opened his bright gray eyes fully, resting on them and the faces that met his. Painted Turtle Man's prophecy had come true. The miracle was unfolding before them. The old man began to sing a medicine song with his moon rattle to honor Kichi-Manitou for this supreme blessing. The wisps of smoke from the small fire twirled about, dancing to the song. The stones within the rattle sparked in a rainbow of colors that seemed to flash all around the lodge. Every now and then, the family could make out the silhouettes and shadows of the ancestor spirits who had gathered within the lodge to pay their respects. All doubt was gone. Once again, the Bear clan would have the Grey Eye magic. Once again, the Nahiwak would have to give the bears the respect they deserved. The next morning, after Soaring Star Woman, the elderly, gray-eyed leader of the Nichitoyasik, visited, Painted Turtle Man emerged from the Bear Lodge to find many of the villagers still standing around. All eyes were on him. "What's happening?" one of them asked impatiently. "Soaring Star Woman, leader of the Circle of Clan Mothers, will hold a sweat lodge ceremony to find the child's name." "Hi, hi," said those nearby, and the crowd dispersed, mostly running off to chatter about the news. Although a sweat lodge was expected, the news that Soaring Star Woman would bring the Grey Eye magic to the ceremony was extraordinary. It's not uncommon for people to be given visions or to see things in a sweat lodge, but in a gray-eyed sweat lodge, the physical apparitions would be shared. Everyone would see the same thing. Everyone in the village helped in some way to prepare for the sweat lodge ceremony. The sweat lodge proceeded in the manner the ceremony had for countless generations. At the end of the fourth and final round, it was time to ask the spirits to reveal the child's name. "We have all honored every matter of creation and all of the teachings of the four directions," prayed Painted Turtle Man. "We now ask for this child's name to be revealed to us." Painted Turtle Man splashed water over the rocks 7 times, the steam hitting the participants gently in waves. The smoky white disc above the pit began to swirl again and grow dark. The lodge began to reverberate with an unseen energy as something began to emerge from the dark swirl. It appeared to be the head and shoulders of a warrior with his eyes closed. Many of the men murmured their approval of what they thought would be interpreted as a strong warrior name. The spectral warrior breathed deeply, and all the people inside the lodge were face to face with him, regardless of their position or perspective. Slowly, the warrior's eyelids began to rise, revealing in the irises the color of blood. Some of the younger participants screamed in horror at the image of a cackling red eye, sworn enemy of the people of Nichitoyasik and servant of evil. This image of the red eye enemy seemed to be a bad omen, an omen of death. Suddenly, the baby in Singing Those Arms began to cry fast and loud. "Do not fear," yelled Painted Turtle Man as the participants began to panic. "You are safe within the womb of our Mother Earth." Out of the cries of the newborn emerged a small gray bear cub, which roared and scratched the ground in mock combat. The red-eyed warrior recoiled. The gray bear rolled around, continuing to roar and paw, standing on its hind legs. It glowed with a gray light and a magical energy, and the red-eyed warrior began to shrink, screaming and cursing. When the warrior had diminished and faded, the gray bear cub stood triumphant in the center of the sweat lodge, roaring and pawing the air. The participants cheered. "Little gray bear boy of the Bear Clan," Painted Turtle Man shouted. The people cheered, whooping and howling their approval. "Singers," said Painted Turtle Man, "sing the creator song." The deep boom of the drum answered him as they took up the song honoring Kichi-Manitou. The participants had accomplished what they came to do and had suffered. Now, it was the time to receive gifts and feast. Little Gray Bear Boy grew, as children will, and for the most part the magic eluded him. The fortunes of the Bear Clan seemed to rise and fall in the natural rhythm of life. Little Gray Bear Boy tried to learn the Grey Eye magic, but he did not understand how it worked. Often the magic manifested itself in those around him as he sat daydreaming. On more than one occasion, Little Gray Bear Boy turned his cousin into an otter or a duck as they swam. And once he burned Painted Turtle Man's hand with blue flame when making a fire for a ceremony. At no time did they feel the loss of Soaring Star Woman more than when Little Gray Bear Boy struggled to understand the magic in him. "The Grey Eye magic will be with you when you need it most," Painted Turtle Man would say. "Creator's gifts are not to be used for day-to-day nonsense. Learn the ways of your ancestors, and they will give you guidance." "That way, I know you are right," Little Gray Bear Boy would respond. "I'm glad you're here to teach me." During these times, Painted Turtle Man reminded himself of the winters after his wife's passing. When he seemed so alone in this world, he had despaired, feeling like his life would never again have meaning. The old man was always humbled by these memories. He would never have thought Creator would have saved the best days of his life for the end of his journey. As Little Gray Bear Boy grew, he began to wonder about the manner in which he would earn his warrior name and become a man. The manner in which he proved himself would largely influence the name he was given. Could he earn a hunter's name like his father? Would he perform a heroic deed like his uncle? Most of the time, Little Gray Bear Boy wandered the forest, picking medicines with Painted Turtle Man, his Musum. Perhaps it would be digging root man or scraping bark man. Little Gray Bear Boy snickered at these silly thoughts. When he had mastered his magic, the Nihilwak would be forced to give him a strong warrior name. Shining Thunderbird Man, Burning Eagle Man, or Gray Bear, like his legendary ancestor. As the fire died down, Little Gray Bear Boy looked up into the flickering shadows dancing off the lodge poles. They slowed their movements and lulled him to sleep. Little Gray Bear Boy recovered from his very first Sundance with difficulty. Over the next 2 years, his life changed. The Bear Clan seemed to be losing its influence as the rest of the village sought to exercise some claim or jurisdiction over the boy's life. It was time he began the rites of passage and become a man. "I have an idea," said Painted Turtle Man. "I've been thinking about this for quite some time. In fact, I was hoping for something like this to happen." "What is your plan?" asked Brown Shield Man. "I think it is time my grandson began his vision quest." The entire family was silent for a time. "Your solution is to send my son away?" asked White Willow Woman. "It would only be for 4 days," assured Painted Turtle Man. "When one of the Nihilwak has come to a crossroads in his or her life, then the time of the vision quest is at hand. He will walk the forest and commune with the spirits and with our animal brothers. He will ask Kichi-Manitou, the Great Spirit, to give him a vision, so he may make the right decision on which direction his life journey should take." Little Gray Bear Boy's vision quest began in the normal way. He lived off the land, independently and alone. He looked for signs and teachings from his animal brothers and pondered their meaning. On the 3rd day, he encountered an encampment of the Red Eyes warriors. Little Gray Bear Boy thought his heart was going to stop. His vision quest was over. He had to get back at once and tell someone what he knew. A crow landed at the top of the circular lodge and began cawing loudly. The leader of the Red Eye warriors looked up at it and nodded. "There is someone here," he yelled. "Fan out and find him." It was time to run. Little Gray Bear Boy moved to the south as fast as his feet could carry him. He would have to turn northeast to get back to Nichiswayasi. He could hear men yelling behind him, but also a barking and growling that did not sound like dogs, but something much worse, something savage. He continued south, and had gone only a short distance when he ran right into a fast-flowing river. With the blood pounding in his head, he had not heard the rush of moving water. He waded in, looking for a shallow place to cross. The water pushed him hard along the current, and everywhere he stepped seemed deeper and deeper. Something came crashing out of the forest behind him. It was an abnormally large coyote, bigger than a bear. Its eyes were large and wild, its tongue lolled, and foam dripped from its mouth. Soon 3 others joined it. They sniffed the ground this way and that, converging on the place where Little Gray Bear Boy had entered the river. He had to get across. He dove hard into the water and swam as fast as he could. The river's current pushed him along. He went above and below the surface and down the river, but was still far from the other side. The 4 coyotes, alerted by the splashing, barked and howled along the riverbank. They whimpered and yelped whenever they bumped into the water. Soon several of the red-eye warriors joined them, firing arrows at little Gray Bear Boy in the river. "Find a place to cross," screamed the leader. The men began to wade into the river in both directions, looking for a place to cross, just as he had. Little Gray Bear Boy swam harder and harder and eventually rode the current to the other side downstream. He pulled himself out and staggered northeast towards the Nichisuwayasi, exhausted, soaking wet, and with horrible cramp in his side. Little Gray Bear Boy lumbered along as best as he could, hearing the howling of coyotes to the south. He realized they had found a way to cross the river. He picked up the pace, ignoring the pain in his side, but he was moving too slow. The barking and growling was getting closer. Soon they were on his heels. The bow was heavy. He drew an arrow with great effort. Is this where he would make his stand? Would the people learn of the red-eye warriors only as they were being attacked? The coyotes reached him, but stopped short, looking at one another and then back at him. They bared their teeth and drooled. The fur on the back of their necks stood up straight. The largest of the 4 coyotes stepped towards little Gray Bear Boy and spoke. "You're a long way from home, Gray Eye," it growled. "Stay back," shouted little Gray Bear Boy, pointing his arrow at them. "You do not command me, pretender." "We serve the Red Eye," shouted the others. The leader barked and leapt towards little Gray Bear Boy. The boy loosed an arrow, and it sank deep into the coyote's shoulder. The coyote yelped and fell over. When it got to his feet and pulled the arrow out with its teeth, little Gray Bear Boy turned and ran. The other coyotes rushed to their leaders, sniffing and licking at him. As he ran, little Gray Bear Boy drew his turtle shell rattle out and tried to think of a song that might help him. The fire chant and water chant were of no use. There was no fire or water nearby now to use. He looked at the dirt and rock beneath his feet. He was running and decided to sing a song dedicated to Mother Earth. Perhaps she could help him. As the coyotes snapped at his back with their fangs, the earth beneath them rose up. Pillars of dirt and large rocks burst forth from the ground and blocked their path. One of the coyotes ran right into a large boulder and yelped. Another coyote was pitched high into the air and knocked over a tree as it came crashing down. Still, they continued their pursuit, dodging the pillars of earth and trying to gain on the boy. Little Gray Bear Boy was running out of options. Exhausted, he knew eventually his body would betray him and he would be devoured by the beast. He hurled himself forward with one last burst of energy, feeling his legs giving out from under him. "Kichi-Manitou, protect me!" he cried as he came crashing down. His body slid forward on the dirt, coming to a rest in front of a slender pair of silver-skinned feet. The feet belonged to a beautiful woman wearing a long white dress. Her hair was as black as the night sky, her skin luminescent like the moon. Her eyes were a bright gray, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. The air around him shook with a force he had never known. The coyotes in pursuit stopped abruptly. Her gaze was upon them. Little Gray Bear Boy could see her eyes begin to glow with a light from within. He covered his eyes and felt an intense heat as the 4 coyotes burst into flame and were destroyed. Little Gray Bear Boy did not get up, but remained face down on the ground. He knew from his dreams that she was the white buffalo calf woman of legend. Thank you. I would speak to you now as a fellow human being with all the flaws and shortcoming of any member of our human family. I would share with you that which I think I know with the understanding that I know nothing and I understand even less. Know that my words come from a place of love, that I mean not to offend or provoke anger. I wish only to provoke thought and positive action. I don't know exactly where the words came from. It started out me trying to remember stories told by my elders, and now my ancestors, when I was a child. When my first child was born with gray eyes, it became important to me to find those stories. Unfortunately, many of the elders who told those stories have since passed on. I've since learned that many tribes know the legend of the Gray Eyes. There's even a large clan on the prairies who carry the name Gray Eyes and may be descended from the heroes of those legends. Those stories were nearly lost, so I was unable to recover only bits and pieces. I thought of what I wanted my children to learn and what the lost children of Turtle Island